In today's episode, I'm sharing with you one simple tool that can relieve so much of the stress and anxiety that comes with fertility challenges. If you've never heard about EFT or tapping, or perhaps you have and you'd like to learn a little bit more about how it can relate to your fertility journey, then stay tuned. This conversation is one you'll want to hear. Welcome to Your Journey to Fertility. This is the podcast that blends both science with spirit to give you all the tools you need as you navigate your fertility journey. I'm your host, Jennifer Edmonds, and for the last 15 years, I've been helping women on their journeys to motherhood and beyond. I believe that combining the latest scientific research along with the best energetic and mindset practices will help you to avoid putting your life on hold and bring you closer to your baby. Here each week, you'll learn ways to support your fertility and trust your body so you can stop stressing that you'll never have a baby and finally walk your path to motherhood. This is the Your Journey to Fertility podcast. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so happy to have you here as always. And I have a really special conversation coming up today. Now, Sarah Holland is someone that I met many years ago when I was struggling on my own fertility journey. And EFT, or tapping, as some people call it, wasn't something I had ever heard about until I came across Sarah. And she told this story about how she had a fear of public speaking and that had been going on her whole life. And she found this tool called EFT, practiced it for 10 minutes, and her fear of public speaking went away completely. And then she thought, now how can this help me on my own fertility journey? And what she discovered was truly fascinating. And she now runs a beautiful business called Fertile Mindset, helping women do just that. I loved working with Sarah as I was trying to conceive. She is a very special person that I've come across in this space. She's been doing this work for many, many years, I think into the decades, as she'll go into and explain. She has such a beautiful, calming voice and presence, and she will explain so much about this tool and this practice. It is something you're going to want to hear. If you're looking for something that is simple, easy, quick, that you can do anywhere at any time, then this following conversation is for you. So let's get started. Here is Sarah. Sarah, welcome to the podcast. I am so thrilled to have you here with me today for so many reasons, but most of all because I just think you are one of my favorite people that I have met on both my personal and professional fertility journey. And it's just been such an honor to get to know you over the last few years. And I would love to just start by getting to know you a little bit more. So if you could tell people who you are and what you do.
Oh, thank you, Jen. What a lovely welcome. And, firstly, I'm just really pleased to be here. And I'm really pleased that you have a podcast. This is amazing. And you're doing so well with it. And you're getting your message out into the world and all the support that you give so brilliantly in your program and on Instagram and everywhere else. And yeah, I'm really, really proud of you for launching your amazing podcast. So thank you for having me here. So my name is Sarah Holland. I'm on the opposite side of the world to you in the UK, not far from London. And my specialism is mindset support with using the technique called EFT, sometimes called tapping. EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. And I do all of this under the umbrella of Fertile Mindset, which initially came out of a deep passion and my own lived experience of fertility issues. So I've been running Fertile Mindset for 20 years now, I think. It's crazy how time goes. And 9 of those 20 years, I was on my own fertility journey. And I do have 2 children now, very luckily and very happily, both through natural conception with a little bit of medical help along the way. And also our second child came to us through adoption. So I traveled all the different paths, went through all the different thought processes, really, really helped me understand and empathize with my clients that I traveled that path too, And now I'm just really passionate about supporting people on a fertility journey to help them have the most, what can we say? I didn't want to say the word positive, but, positive, effective, present, and helpful experience they can on their fertility journey, which I believe comes down to mindset and our thoughts and our beliefs and what we say to ourselves and what we listen to and what we let go of. It's make or break, really, isn't it? And it can colour everything and the choices that we make along the way, and ultimately the success potentially of our fertility journey as well, if our mindset is on board and supportive and we feel motivated and we feel strong, or if we feel depleted and like we can't keep going. And that's one of the most heartbreaking things to me, and what powers my fertility support work is knowing that one of the main reasons that people give up on fertility treatment, on IVF, is due to the emotional strain, and that's heartbreaking to hear that, when if only they'd done maybe 1 or 2 more cycles, they may have had their baby. So that's me in a nutshell. I'm sure we're going to find out a lot more with your questions.
Yes, please. You weren't always in this space. So how did you find tapping, and what made you want to bring it into this space of fertility support?
Yeah, I discovered tapping, it must be 2003, I think. So just a little over the 20 years that I've been using it professionally. I started my kind of work in the therapy world with reflexology way back in 99, last century, last millennium. Crazy.
Wow.
How did I do that? I'd had a really positive experience myself with reflexology. I suffered with irritable bowel syndrome from the age of 18, and it really was debilitating. I lost a lot of weight and I couldn't eat, and it was reflexology that gave me my life back. So I was very passionate about that technique, and I retrained in reflexology literally a couple of days after I came home from my honeymoon. Having got married in 99, and I came home and I retrained and I had this new life. And very quickly, women were coming through my door to have reflexology who were on a fertility journey. Mm-hmm. And I knew nothing about it. I was only, how old was I? 22, 23. I had no thoughts about having children myself at that stage. I didn't really understand. I definitely didn't understand fertility tests and diagnoses and treatment. I knew nothing about it. But these clients kept coming. So I researched like crazy. I was reading everything I could, going on every fertility course that I could, and quickly became fascinated, and seeing the results that I was getting through reflexology was amazing too. But I was always really frustrated with the kind of lack of skills and ability to address the whole emotional piece. Now, reflexology is an amazing therapy. I still love it myself. I'll still get a treatment whenever I can. And it does induce an amazing, relaxation effect during the treatment. My clients would go out floating on a cloud, and they'd tell me they felt amazing and they slept well that night and they felt calm and at peace. But they'd come back the next week and it'd almost be like they're back at square one with the emotional side of their fertility journey. They were still very stressed and overwhelmed and frustrated and sad and everything else that was going on. Yeah, I felt desperate in a way to help them. I really wanted to find a way, and I was researching all different reflexology techniques. I was using chakra balancing through the feet and looking at balancing the endocrine system and all kinds of things that I hoped would help. And it wasn't too effective. It would again help during the time, but then they'd go home and, be back to square one. And then I kept hearing about tapping, EFT. I guess because I was in the therapy world, 2003, it was a relatively new technique. And I just kept hearing about it. I even got, leaflets dropped through my door and telling me to train in this technique. And I just thought it sounded crazy. I thought, how can tapping on points on your head and your face and your body deal with quite serious and complex emotional issues? Like, how on earth? It just sounds like a complete scam, like a snake oil thing. I was really quite angry. I was really upset that this was being missold, I believed. It really fired me up because I'd had hypnotherapy myself. I'd had counseling and talk therapy myself. And I knew how hard work it could feel to overcome, fears and phobias and anxiety and depression and all the things that EFT was presuming, could help. So I was had this kind of bubbling, skepticism and resentment and all sorts going on in the background. And then one day in an online forum, it was way before Facebook groups, but in an online forum for complementary therapists where I used to hang out and speak to colleagues and, do extra training and things, there was a guy there called Jonathan. I remember he lived on the Isle of Wight in the UK, so nowhere near me, on an island. And he was offering free EFT sessions to resolve phobias. And I had a really intense phobia of public speaking. I mean, you wouldn't believe it now the way I'm speaking to you nonstop. But I used to hate any kind of speaking to one person, to a group. It just felt like the worst nightmare. And I had a meeting that I had to chair the next week, and there was no way of getting out of it. I was absolutely dreading it. It was for a reflexology group that I was co-founder of, and I had to chair this meeting. So I said to Jonathan, I said, well, yeah, let's try it out, see if it works. I don't think it will, but let's have a go. And within 20 minutes of my first session with him, which was on the phone because we lived so far away, I would say 90% of my phobia had gone. It had completely reversed to the point where I wanted to go back in time and redo all the terrible talks that I'd given at school and at college. And it was like, oh goodness, why did I make such a fuss over that? I could have done it so much better if I just, relaxed into it. So I went ahead and I chaired the meeting. I had a little wobble during the meeting, so I went back and did one more session with him. That's all I ever had, was 2 sessions, and that mopped up the last kind of triggers for anxiety for me. And since then, which is like 21 years later, I have never had any fear of public speaking, to the point where I've been on live TV for BBC News and enjoyed it. That's still bizarre for me to say that. And, it's been tested multiple times. And of course, that very, a real turnaround experience of a technique that I was really skeptical about, but getting such amazing results made me really curious. And I just leapt straight into it. I thought, well, what else can this do? And I used it on myself on a huge number of issues and just wanted to experiment with it. Yeah. And then I just did my training. Within months, I was signed up to do my training. And once I was training, I started offering it to my existing fertility clients who were coming to me for reflexology. I said, look, I've got this new technique. Let's see how it works for you. And we just kind of do an extra 10 minutes or something at the end of their session. And it was remarkable. And that just opened the door to this whole idea of how I could really work with mindset and fertility and mindset in general, using such a powerful technique. And yeah, the rest, as they say, is history. I've never looked back. It's been amazing to be my life for the last 2 decades.
Well, what an awesome story. And isn't it so remarkable that you fell into the fertility space kind of by accident, well before you had your own fertility journey? And I find so many practitioners in this space, that is the case for them. They end up working, and then only later on do they find out. It's like the universe is just kind of, throwing these little stones just to kind of get you ready. And yeah. So
yeah, it does make me wonder with that, and I've often reflected back and thought, because I was so attracted to the fertility. It was like a magnetism that I could not switch off. It was like, this is fascinating. Like, I need to learn more. And I didn't even want children at that stage. I actually had a phobia of childbirth, which I dealt with tapping later. But, I felt very scared of childbirth. So there was no way that I felt positive about it and imagining myself in their shoes or anything. I just was really fascinated by the struggles they were going through and how I could help them chart their cycles and interpret their cycles and understand their hormone balance and work with them. And yeah, I found it fascinating from day one. And then as soon as I decided that I did want a baby, I got rid of my fears, and immediately that switched on. And I thought, right, I'm going to chart my own cycles. Like, I know how to do it. I've been guiding my clients through doing this. And I got the Fertility Friend. Well, it wasn't an app in those days. It was just Fertility Friend website. Got my thermometer, and I thought, this is going to be amazing. I'm going to know exactly when I'm ovulating, and it's going to be so easy for me because, I know what I'm doing. Wow. And then I discovered for the first 12 months of trying, I didn't ovulate once. Wow. And that was such a gift, really, because I wouldn't have known that, Jen. I would have carried on trying month after month. My period would have come. I'd have thought, oh, I'm just not getting pregnant. But I knew I wasn't ovulating due to contraception I'd been on before. I know that was my imbalance. But it gave me so much more information from day one, to understand my cycles and to work with them and to keep monitoring them and know what was happening. And I wouldn't have had any of that if I hadn't worked in fertility first. I wouldn't have even known how to find it. I don't know where I would have begun, because there weren't podcasts or, near enough the information there is now online. So yeah, it did feel like a nudge in the right direction for me personally. Who knows how and why these things happen, but it did. And I'm really grateful for it.
So is everyone. So can we talk about what is tapping, what is EFT, and how does it work. And one of the things I love so much about it, and similar to yoga in a lot of ways, it has kind of, a lot of people assume this woo-woo element to it, where it all seems a bit mystical and a bit too good to be true. But it is one of those complementary or holistic therapies that has actually been studied extensively in Western medicine for all sorts of different treatments and different cases. So, how does it actually work? And why is it something that's so good to use on your fertility journey?
Gosh, what a big question.
All right, there's a lot of questions in there. Sorry.
Yeah, there's a lot that we could talk about there. And you're right, it has its foundation in, you could say, the more woo-woo side, at least how we view it here in our culture and our society, of the foundations of EFT is in the Chinese meridian system. So a lot of us are familiar, especially those on a fertility journey, with acupuncture. I had tons of acupuncture when I was trying to conceive. It was fantastic. Yeah, you too. And so we're often familiar with what that involves, and the insertion of needles along the meridian lines through the body. So we probably saw a chart on the wall in our acupuncturist office, with all those lines on the body, and that's the lines of energy through the body that help our body to function and to have this vital energy running to every part of our mind and our body. And in acupuncture, they insert the needles along the lines to rebalance. Whereas in tapping, we use an EFT, we use our own fingertips to tap on the major meridian points. And they're all on the head, the face, the upper body, and on the hands. They're all very easy to access points. And we tap through each of the major meridian lines in turn to bring about balance. Now, the theory behind it is that any negative emotion we experience, now, when I say negative emotion, I mean unwanted, unnecessary emotion. Of course, negative emotions can be valid. We sometimes need fear and we need anger, for example, but the ones that we stay stuck with, the ones we know aren't good for us anymore, whether they're emotions, beliefs, thoughts, whatever it is we're experiencing, they're caused by a disruption in the body's energy system. So a disruption in our meridian system. And I think of the meridians, because it is still a little bit of an abstract theory for us, I like to think of it a bit like our body's electrical wiring system, a bit like we have wires in our house, helping electricity flow to every part of our house, keep the lights on, keep the appliances running and everything. If we have a disruption going on in our energy system, it's a bit like a power surge or a short circuit in our electrics, and things don't function as they should. And often we feel it quite physically as well. We might feel butterflies in our stomach, tension in our chest as that disruption is going on. So with tapping, we focus on whatever the issue is. So we bring it to mind, we allow it to be present, we feel the emotion, and then we tap on all those meridian endpoints while saying words and phrases to keep us focused. It is really important to stay present with it, which can feel a little bit strange to some people at first, because we're used to kind of positive affirmations and, let's just repeat things that we want to feel rather than dwelling and focusing on the negative. So people worry that, well, won't, talking about the negative and staying focused on the negative, won't that embed it further and make it stronger? But no, it's the tapping is then helping us release it, helping it just drift away if it's not needed, because it's restoring our energetic balance. And then we get back to what we do need and let go of what we don't. So it's quite lovely to see those, pre-held emotions and thoughts and beliefs just drop away, and their own innate way of dealing with whatever that challenge is in life or on their fertility journey in their most natural and healthy and supportive way. Because we all have that ability, to look at things in a more rational, logical way, to look at the facts and not focus on worst case scenarios, and to connect with our intuition as well, and our inner wisdom, and that higher knowledge of like what is actually best for me in this challenging situation, rather than listening to all the noise of what other people think. Get back to what's true for you. So very rarely with tapping do we need to repeat positive affirmations or anything, because they just naturally come forward from us, which I love. Now, all of this is based on that theory of the Chinese meridians, but there has been a lot of research recently, and Peter Stapleton is someone to look up actually with her writings and research around EFT as well. And that's Peter, P-E-T-A, Stapleton, because they're now, there's so much more research looking at, well, is there more of a kind of cognitive effect of the touch and the thoughts, and is there something else that we're doing that's being overriding and resolving those negative thought patterns. And also there's a lot of research on the outcomes and the benefits and the long-term effects of tapping, showing that it's most definitely not a short-term placebo effect, that people have been revisited in research studies 6 months, 12 months later, and found that their results are still at the same place they were, with fears and phobias and anxiety, which I can attest to as well with my phobia of public speaking 21 years on, I'm still here and still speaking. You're not going to stop me.
That is a really good way of explaining it. And I think one of the things people are so resistant to, and I find this a lot as well, is to embrace those negative in inverted commas thoughts, those uncomfortable thoughts and the things that we don't want to be there, because we feel that if we do allow them to be present, it's going to be, telling the universe that that's what we want to bring into our lives, or, that's what we're okay with, and it's going to set us up for, failure on the next cycle and the next cycle. But I think that the opposite is true. And when you do find a way to just be present with those difficult emotions and just allow them to move through you, as opposed to pushing them away and pushing them down, it's so liberating. I met you when I was going through my 3rd round of IVF. And, I was a million miles from home and, spoke a different language to the doctors around me. And I was such a mess. And obviously going through IVF, you're a mess anyway. And it really wasn't about let's get you pregnant straight away. Like that wasn't sort of the immediate goal. It was let's bring you to a place where you're not so miserable. And that's what I found tapping gave me so immediately. And I took that with me. And it's been such an invaluable tool for many years now since I met you. So can you speak a little bit about how it affects your mindset and why you think that this idea of mindset is such an important one when you're trying to conceive?
Gosh, what you said there right at the start about allowing the thoughts to come forward. Our mind is so powerful. It's really powerful. And it's not just going to be quiet if it has something to tell us and it wants to help us and protect us and, all the things that our mind is trying to help us with good intentions, but often misdirected, And if we do just push away the fears, the worries, the negative beliefs, they'll just come back again. And especially on a fertility journey, I think people do like to try and box things away just so they can focus on the task in hand and not have all those negative thoughts always there. And one thing that often comes up is age. People will worry about their age and in relation to their fertility, often compounded by fertility clinics showing all the statistics to them about how much more difficult it is to get pregnant the older their age is, and these numbers and statistics really stay with them. And if they have a birthday approaching, they might think, well, I've just got to put that to one side, I can't think about it, and they're 39 or whatever, perhaps they're coming up to a milestone birthday. But then as soon as they do turn 40, that all comes out again. Or as soon as they hear that in the news again, that women's fertility declines with age, or as they see a statistic, it all comes bursting out the box again that they'd so neatly kind of put away. And that happens as well with other people's pregnancies. You can feel like you're doing okay and you're managing as long as you stay in your own little world and you don't need to see anybody else who's pregnant, but they're everywhere, aren't they, these pregnant women? You can't avoid them. They're out there in the streets and with their prams, and they're at work announcing their pregnancies to the whole office, and that friend calls you and says, I've got good news to tell you, and just blurts it out without any warning. So it's really hard to know when the next trigger is around the corner. And again, all those thoughts will come out. So yeah, just pushing things away and trying to think positively doesn't cut it at all. And our mind is so much more powerful than that. And I think when we acknowledge that and allow it and voice it in a safe way and in a way that is supported, like within an EFT process, it's really, really healthy to do that. And then if we have a technique like tapping that can move us through and beyond to something that is healthier and feels very natural, yeah, all the better. You know, we don't have to stay stuck with those emotions and working through them for months on end. We don't have that kind of time with a fertility journey. You know, that's what a lot of people come to me for EFT say is, you know, I've perhaps looked at talk therapy or counselling, but I know that I'd need to commit to many months of sessions, and I have IVF starting in a month, and I want to be prepared, and I want my mind to feel like I'm in a good place. So can tapping do that? And that's what we work towards, you know, is getting them prepared as quickly as possible. So you asked about why mindset is important for fertility in particular. And I think, you know, gosh, a fertility journey, we know now with all the research out there that it is one of the most stressful things that we can go through. And if people still, anyone listening, you know, still isn't aware of that and still is kind of beating themselves up saying, you know, why am I struggling so much? Why am I finding this so hard? It's not such a big deal. What has been found through research is that going through a fertility journey is just as stressful and just as likely to trigger depression as someone being diagnosed with a terminal illness, a terminal condition, which we know, and everyone would empathize with that, and everyone would say that is a stressful event, a hugely stressful event. But for some reason, we minimize the fertility experience and don't acknowledge that. But so first of all, yeah, let's acknowledge that. And let's also realize that your mind and the thoughts that you have are with you like 24/7, you know, and whatever you're saying to yourself about your fertility journey is always there by your side. And if it's negative things, if it's, you know, this isn't going to work, you don't even deserve to be a mother, you should have tried earlier, you should have tried to get pregnant in your early 20s, or all the different things that you're saying to yourself all the time, it has such an impact, such a huge impact on how you view yourself, how you take your next steps, whether you feel like you do deserve to go and get a second, third, fourth opinion from a clinic, whether you go into those clinic appointments feeling empowered and asking the questions and feeling good about yourself as you do that or not. You know, it can really make or break and change the whole outcome of a journey and change your own, you know, outcome as well. Because like you said, when you first came to me, it's not just about let's get this woman pregnant and, you know, like a fertility clinic, that's their focus. Great, they can do the treatment. But when women come to me, I want to look at them and how they are and make sure that they are whole and complete and healthy, whatever happens, and before they conceive their baby, not waiting to conceive the baby and that will be the, you know, solution, but actually making sure that they feel good beforehand and they like themselves and they like their life again, you know, and are happy. So yeah, I mean, imagine when we think of our mindset and all the things we say to ourselves, imagine that was a friend saying that to us, our best friend who we spoke to every day, and they only said negative stuff to us about how trying for a baby and how it's not going to work and why did you wait so long and you're getting too old. And imagine we just wouldn't, you know, that wouldn't be a best friend, that wouldn't be someone you allowed into your life, but we say it in the privacy of our own head all the time. And once we recognize that, then we can do something about it. And yeah, obviously we're big fans of tapping. It's a great way to turn those thoughts around.
I think that a lot of the women that I work with, and absolutely I think this was true for myself, that we think that this is all going to go away, all the negative thoughts that we tell ourselves, all the fears we have, they'll just disappear when we get that positive pregnancy test. And 100% of the time just doesn't work that way. You know, you think, okay, well, now I'm pregnant. Now I'll start living my life again, or things will be easier. And then it's, you know, you've got to wait for the first scan and then you've got to wait for your genetic test and then the 12 weeks, like it doesn't end. And then you've got a little baby in your arms and then you're dealing with new motherhood. And I think that being able to work on your mindset before you become pregnant has such an incredible flow-on effect for the rest of your journey. And, you know, I went through both primary and secondary infertility, and I didn't do any of this work with my first pregnancy. And I see the extreme difference between the first and the second. And I absolutely believe that if I had done all of this work the first time around, I don't think I would have had any trouble conceiving the second time. But, you know, you learn these lessons when you learn these lessons. So we can't really plan that. But I just find that we can't tell people enough And the mind is so incredibly powerful. So thank you for
Yeah.
sharing all of that.
You know, it's never too early to get support, and it's also never too late. You know, I've had people contact me before they've even started to try to conceive because they
Amazing.
know they may have fertility problems. Perhaps they've got PCOS or endometriosis or a history of, you know, gynecological problems, or they're uncertain, a bit like I was, like, you know, do I really want to have a baby? Have I got any fears around this? So there are people that come way, way early. And there are also people that contact me saying, I'm in the middle of an IVF cycle, my embryo transfer is tomorrow, and I'm freaking out, and can you help me? So there's every stage, and it's never too late at all, you know, and definitely there are things that can be done to bring down stress levels. But, you know, as you were talking about that, the follow-on impact during pregnancy and new motherhood, and then potentially a second trying for a baby as well. I was realizing in my mind as I was thinking through all the women that I've supported who have got pregnant, and the ones that came to me for support, maybe for a big portion of their fertility journey, then got pregnant, seemed to not glide through pregnancy because, you know, it's an emotional time, but needed less support in pregnancy and maybe drifted off and just checked in with me and told me later when their baby was born, and, you know, and that was amazing. But then I've had some people that come to me for support and very quickly get pregnant and, you know, within a couple of sessions or something. And then they've needed the support to continue through pregnancy because it's like it's another challenge that's come up now. It's like, gosh, I thought, you know, the fertility journey was stressful, but now I'm actually holding on to this precious baby. And like you say, it's like another series of 2-week waits, isn't it? With every scan and every test and every milestone to get through. And then the same when the baby arrives, you know, that's a fraught time, that kind of what they call the fourth trimester, isn't it? Of the first 12 weeks when the baby is so vulnerable and so really attached to you still, and you're looking at every sign that they're okay. So, but yeah, there does seem to be a correlation with the more support they've had in the preconception time, the stronger, the more resilient. And, you know, obviously they get to use the technique by themselves, but get to choose the technique a lot with me. So then they feel confident using it by themselves as well. So if they have a wobble and they're feeling stressed, they can tap themselves and use EFT and calm their emotions down. So yeah, there's definitely a continuum there.
Amazing. I've noticed in the last couple of years that there is, you know, this is the blessing and the curse of the internet, but there are a lot of, you know, tapping experts on YouTube and places like this. And, you know, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I wonder what your opinion is with, you know, just going and finding out how to do tapping, say, with a YouTube tutorial versus working with a really skilled practitioner who specializes in what you're going through. Is there a difference? And, you know, what might you get from one or the other there?
Yeah, you're right. Oh my gosh, YouTube's full of everything, isn't it? But definitely full of tapping videos. And it is often for people the first way in. Brad Yates is a great one out there who's got tons of tapping videos on all sorts of topics, and Nick Ortner and Jess Ortner. And yeah, there's loads of resources out there. I must say, I do get quite a lot of people that come to me and say, you know, I need something to help. I'm feeling so very stressed and I do need something to help. And I keep hearing good things about tapping, but I've tried it myself with YouTube videos and I don't get the results. So I'm not sure if it's going to work. Why should it work when it hasn't already? You know, so I do hear that quite a lot, that that's their first step, that they just used the YouTube video. It wasn't effective and it almost put them off trying it again, you know. And on the other hand, some people come to me and they're brand new, they've never used tapping, they learn it thoroughly with me, they understand the kind of, I call like the golden rules of tapping, the things that you must do and the order that you must do them to get results. And then they can go and use those YouTube videos pretty effectively because they now understand like what it's trying to do and they can tweak it and change it if they need to. You know, it's so tapping ideally needs to be really tailored to what you're dealing with and have the right phrases and the right approach to really hone in on the specifics that you are dealing with. It doesn't mean that you can't use YouTube videos or take part in group tapping sessions where other people are, you know, having tapping while you wait for your tapping and things like that. But there are techniques that we use. There's one called borrowing benefits, where you literally prepare yourself before you take part in that other tapping to make sure you get the benefits for yourself as well. It's probably too complex to go into here, but it's something that really makes it makes it your own, and make sure that you get the benefits from it. Because I think when you just follow along with pre-written scripts that might not be anything like the issue you're dealing with, even if the title seemed like it was, your situation is so much more specific and unique to you that it can just miss the mark, and then you think, oh, this tapping thing doesn't work, but it hasn't really been a fair try of it. I like a kind of hybrid approach, because I really love it when people tap by themselves, and I like to give them support to tap by themselves, like audios and videos and scripts and things like that, because I think it's really good to kind of give that and give that encouragement and support, even if they can't be in sessions with me 24 hours a day, because they can't be. But then to make sure they've got the backup and support as well. So, when I run programs or in my membership, and, I will have group sessions and tapping and ways that they can ask for support, but then give them the resources and the videos so they can go off and tap by themselves as well. So yeah, it's trying to get the balance there and meet all the needs.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that, because I do wonder, and a lot of people will come to me and they're like, oh yeah, I like you said, I tried tapping, I didn't find it that effective. And then I asked them where they did their tapping, and it does sound like it is a very disconnected way of doing it. So the only experience I really had with tapping was directly through you, and it was amazing. So highly recommend you just go to a professional who works in the field that you're struggling with. So yeah, completely agree. Sarah, where can people learn more about you? Where do you hang out? What have you got coming up? Tell us all the things.
Oh, so many things. Thank you, Jen. Well, my website is fertilemindset.com, and I have a free gift on the website, which I'd love to share with your listeners. And it's my Fertility EFT starter kit. And that will give you a full video tuition of EFT. It does give you some pre-written scripts in a written format, so you can kind of change the words if you need to, for 5 key areas on a fertility journey. And lots of other bits in there as well that can help you get started using tapping. And that can be received at fertilemindset.com/fertility starter kit. And also you'll find me on Instagram under fertile_mindset, and Facebook at Fertile Mindset. And yeah, I have all sorts of things coming up. I have my Calm fertility support program launching towards the end of the summer. So that's something that will be available to anyone who signs up for my starter kit. If you like what you see there, then you can get my in-depth support through the Calm program, which is a really beautiful process to go through, and gives unlimited support on your fertility journey. It's something that, through experiencing fertility issues myself, and obviously supporting so many other people now, we don't know how long this journey is going to be. We don't know whether it will just be a couple more months or longer. And through time, I've decided to evolve my offerings so that with my fertility people, who will always have a special place in my heart, when they join my Calm program, they just pay a one-off fee, and then they have support for as long as they need it. So yeah, and hopefully that will keep them connected to really powerful emotional and mindset support for as long as they need it, because it's sadly, the longer a fertility journey goes on, the more we need that support. The more expensive a fertility journey is, the more we need that support. And it used to break my heart when people would leave a membership or leave one-to-one sessions early because they couldn't afford it. So that's my little way of giving back. And yes, anything else that people want to ask me, they're very welcome to either email me through my website or contact me on Instagram or Facebook. I check all my inboxes. It's always me that's replying, and I'm very happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Sarah. It's such a beautiful offering, and that's incredible. So thank you. And I'll make sure I add a link to all of those in the show notes as well. Before we finish up, is there any last words or anything that you would like to send out to anyone listening today who is struggling with their own fertility journey?
Yeah. Well, first, I'm just so pleased that they're here and clicked on this episode that is all about mindset and, that kind of softer side, you could say, of fertility. I think we become very focused on what we can do with our physical fertility, the hormone balance, the supplements, the treatment, and not as much care and attention is always given to the emotional side. Now, I know your people are very in tune with that, with yoga as well. But thank you, first of all, for being here for yourself, not for listening to me, but for being here for yourself and giving this time that you've dedicated here to you and your emotions and your mindset and your well-being. Whenever your baby comes, you are important. And if you keep prioritizing that in this way, then I think that will give you more strength than you ever knew possible. And you'll be able to do things that you never thought possible and see your journey through until you do have your baby in your arms.
It's so beautiful. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much. And this is such a lovely full circle moment, all the years that I've known you, and just having you here is a big honor. So appreciate it. And I hope to speak to you soon.
Thank you, Jen. It's been a real honor to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening all the way to the end of this episode today. I love chatting with Sarah. She is such a beautiful soul, and I hope that you got a lot out of this episode. And I will add a link to her fertility guide down in the show notes as well. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone or on your socials. You never know who might need to hear it or who will benefit from this information. Now, next week on the podcast, I am speaking about all things feminine embodiment, cycle syncing, trauma release, and so much more with my good friend Laura Wilkes. And this is a conversation that is so timely. And I think women, no matter if you're trying to conceive, whatever stage you are in life, it's a conversation that you'll want to listen to. So I can't wait to have you back for that episode. Until then, I'm sending you all my wishes as you continue your own journey to fertility. The most common thing I hear from students who are on their fertility journey is that the stress of trying to conceive has taken over their life. Your days end up being filled with endless appointments, navigating pregnancy announcements. You're trying to eat right, take all your supplements, and it is all you think about from the moment you wake up. I designed the Element Fertility Yoga course to support your body, your mind, and your mental health in 3 important ways: to synchronize your hormones, increase circulation and blood flow, and to help regulate your nervous system. But on top of this, the greatest gift that you can give yourself throughout this journey is a sense of peace, to help you calm your mind and just make this process feel easier. Every single one of my students tell me that this is the first thing they notice after starting a yoga, meditation, and breathwork practice. But on top of this, you have the amazing benefit of actually supporting and increasing your fertility. Studies have shown that those participating in mind-body programs as they're trying to conceive have success rates 3 times greater than those who don't. The course I've designed walks you through natural conception as well as fertility treatments and IVF cycles. And the best part is you can work through it at your own pace in the comfort of your home. The practices start from just 10 minutes per day. To learn more, visit elementpilatesyoga.com or see the link in the show notes.